Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Regroup Show. I am your host, LJ Walker, a real estate investor helping you realize your dreams of owning a home or investing in one. I want to get you hip to a new game that I see being played on Clubhouse. Today, I actually got into a little slight altercation with someone who actually came for a strategy that I mentioned. Let me paint the whole picture so that you understand what's going on. I went into a room where the topic of discussion was actually what social media platforms are working for you. And what you would do is each person that gets up on the stage, they are asked to introduce themselves, and then basically you state what social media platforms you are on already, and then which ones work, which ones do you see most traction, which ones is where your products are being sold. And if you need help or any assistance with selling, then you go ahead and tell them what that is. And then they, in turn, the people who are in marketing, because the room was set up by someone who is in that area, that's their specialty, they would tell you, okay, you may want to try this particular social media platform. And if you're on that platform, you may want to try this particular software. All right. So as people were pouring into me and giving me ideas as far as what I could do to improve, one woman said that she disagreed with the strategy that I mentioned. One of the men asked me, because he wanted to set up an example as far as what I could do. He asked me if a friend came to me with $10,000 and wanted to invest in real estate, what advice would I give them? So I did ask him, I said, well, what strategy? And he says, any strategy, just pick any one. So I just picked Nurse B&B because that's what I'm currently working on right now. And the woman, she was like, if you were smart, you would tell them to put the money with the developer and invest with them instead. I didn't really know of developers doing that, but as she continued to speak, I realized what she was talking about was crowdfunding. Now, I already am involved in a crowdfund. So I, then turned to her and I said, you know what, I'm already in one, but thanks for your input. I said I did not want to go into the different real estate strategies because this is not a real estate room. This room here is for marketing. But here's what she was trying to do. You see, she is someone who buys property with other people's money. So she basically was trying to say, she was basically trying to draw people to that particular real estate strategy so that she could make money. She really wasn't trying to, let's say, pour into me to help me in marketing, and she really wasn't helping me in real estate at all. And I did come back at her when I realized what she was doing, and I said, you know what, if we really were to break it down, I really would say do mortgage notes, tax liens, or even pad split, because you would make money that way without actually being a landlord, right? But being a landlord, watch this, that's still real estate. Having a Nurse B&B, that's still real estate. But for some reason, it was bothering me the way she did that, particularly when she said, if you were smart, as though I am stupid. And being that I didn't know her, never met her. I don't recall ever being in a room with her before, and if I was, she was not on the stage when I was there, or at least I didn't see her on stage before. And I just felt like the way she said it, she could have said it a different way, but I see where a lot of people will start to, first of all, they'll change the topic of the current purpose for the room, right? Because again, this is a marketing room. It's not a real estate room. That's number one. But number two, they will purposely try to be somewhat insulting and argumentative because they're trying to draw up awareness about their product and service. Does that work? I am not sure if it does or not, but I will tell you this for myself. I personally will not be investing in her. And I'm going to tell you something else. And that is, I don't think you should invest in with people like that either, because a lot of times they're not telling you the whole truth. And I think the reason too why this kept bothering me, because I was wondering to myself why I wasn't letting this go, because I am trying to move in the realm of forgiveness, but for whatever reason it was regurgitating in my mind, and writing in my diary did not assist with this. But then I said, you know what, let's go further. And the Spirit said to me, check the numbers. So I did, and I'm going to break it down to you. As I mentioned, what she's talking about is crowdfunding. I'm in a crowdfund already. Several of them, actually. One of them is paying 8% interest, right? So if you have $10,000 and you put it into a crowdfund that's paying 8%, you probably are going to be making $800 a year, right? So now let's take that $800 and let's divide that $800 by 12. And let's see how much are you getting per month with that. You're making $66.67 a month. All right. Let's take that same $10,000 and do what is known as B&B rental arbitrage. For those of you who don't know what that is when you go to a landlord and you ask them, do they have any available apartments? And if they do, then you tell that landlord that you want to turn that particular property, that particular apartment into an Airbnb or Nurse B&B, which is what I'm trying to do. In New York, Nurse B&B can go anywhere between $2,800 a month to $4,500 a month. That's a hell of a lot more than $66.67. Now, you may say, well, what about maintenance costs? Well, since you are doing rental arbitrage, you're not the landlord as far as keeping up with the property, right? You may be paying for utilities, and utilities really should not go over $100 for an apartment. They really shouldn't. If the landlord allows you to do any sort of maintenance, it'll cost you some money depending on what it is. When it comes to plumbing, heating, etc., that's actually handled by the landlord, not by you, right? So typically maintenance is going to cost a certain amount. But guess what? With rental arbitrage, you can charge those people a security deposit. So the security deposit will actually take care of whatever it is that they have broken. Correct? All right. Now let's move on to if you were to take $10,000 and invest it in a mortgage note. I have a note that cost me $8,000 and it pays $700 a month. That's still more than the $66.67 that you would get from the crowd fund. Right? Okay. Let's look at tax lien investing. $10,000. I like Alabama. Why? Because it's relatively cheap and the redemption period is not that long. You can actually get a tax lien for $450. But let's say you do buy one for $10,000. The interest rate on all tax liens, no matter how much they are in the state of Alabama, is 12%. So if you put in $10,000, you're going to be making $1,200 a month, which is still more than the $66.67 that you get from a crowd fund. Let's take this one step further. Since she said that she would never encourage her friend to be a landlord. Landlords in New York make, on a one-bedroom, they can make $1,600 to $3,000 a month. It really depends. Section 8 vouchers, by the way, are going for $2,200 because my cousin actually is on Section 8. Okay, so that is still more than $66.67. And I'm trying to figure out, how is it that I am not being smart by telling my friend to go with a nurse B&B? I would not be against my friend investing in a crowd fund. I just chose that particular strategy. There's a whole bunch of other strategies that are out there, wholesaling, etc. He did not say choose one strategy over the other, or which one do you think is best. That was not the question. He said pick any strategy. That was the question. So because I picked Nurse B&B, that doesn't necessarily mean that I believe that Nurse B&B is better than the others. But do you see how she took it to another level, which, really doesn't make any sense if you really go back to say what was the original question and what is the question of the room, which is which social media platform is the best. But I want to show you that the reason why she wanted to have this argument is so that she could promote her product. But even though she's promoting her product and trying to say that her product and her way of investing is better, is not necessarily so. That's why you have to do your own math and work out your own numbers. But let's look at something else that's also important. Let's look at the hours, right? Okay, so with a crowd fund, the only time that you really spend is the time that is spent in doing your due diligence in picking the actual fund that you choose to invest in. And you really should do a thorough investigation, because Fundrise, Realty Mogul, all of them, they don't do a full investigation of the funds that they put up on their platform. Like, a lot of them don't check the individual at all. That individual could have went to jail 90 times, have bankruptcy, poor credit, and when I say go to jail, they may have went to jail for real estate fraud. They don't check that on those sites. That's why you should do, when you're doing your background, when you're doing your skip tracing, you should see whether or not that person has that in their background. Okay, that's number one. The only thing that Fundrise, Realty Mogul, and a lot of those other crowdfunding sites check is they check, number one, to make sure that the house is there. And some of them, not all, will check that there's actually a contract between the person who put up that property and the person who they're buying it from. That's it. They don't really do any other form of due diligence. That's up to you to do. All right? And that can actually take a couple of hours. But once you put that money in and you've secured that deal for the crowd fund, you really don't need to look at it again. You just need to check to make sure once a month that you are actually getting paid. And what does that take? Maybe a minute to see that you got $66.67. Now, I have, to be fair, seen some for 12 and 15%, which means that you would make $125 a month, which is still nice, right? Okay. But Nurse B&B makes $2,800 a month and more in New York, just so you know. How many hours a day? Typically, for a regular Airbnb, it's 2 to 3 hours a day. But it really depends on how you have things set up. Nurses, because they are, and other medical professionals, since they really are not in the home much, they spend more time at work. They're working 14, 16, some of them even more hours per day. So that means they're not even in the apartment that much. Everybody's going to be different. But a lot of people that I know with Nurse B&B, they say they really don't spend any hours with that person. Because what they do is, in the beginning, when that person comes in, they may spend an hour with that person. And then for the next 3 months or 6 months, however long their contract is, they don't see that person ever again. Right? All right, well, let's go into mortgage notes. Let's say it's a performing mortgage note. All right. With a performing mortgage note, it's 0 to 15 minutes a day. Not even a day, honestly, a month that you're going to spend. Again, the most time you're going to spend with a mortgage note is in the beginning, when you're looking at the list of notes, when you're running title, when you're looking it up on Google to see the pictures, when you're getting the assessed value of the property, or when you call the realtor to have them give a description, video, or, again, take pictures of the property to make sure that it's still standing and that it's still there. Otherwise than that, you're just basically looking in your bank account to see if the check went in. Okay? Now let's look at tax liens. How much time do you spend with tax liens? Tax liens really is like notes. You do your due diligence in the beginning. So in the beginning, before you actually buy that tax lien, that's when you're spending the most time. And honestly, that can take a couple of hours to a day. Once you figure out which tax lien you want and you buy it, you bid on it, and you secure the deal, then basically you don't do anything after that. Why? Because tax liens, although it's monthly, you don't get that money until the end of redemption, not in the middle. So it's like a CD. So yes, you're getting $1,200 a month, but you're not going to see it until, if it's 1 year, you're not going to see it until the end of the year. Okay? And if they pay off the taxes before the end of the year, then that's pretty much it. You have to sign off on it, and writing your signature on a piece of paper, that does not take a whole long time. It really doesn't. So now let me move over to being a landlord. Being a landlord, it really varies. It really depends, again, on who your tenant is. I have a tenant that I really don't spend a whole lot of time with. There are months when I don't get a phone call, I don't get a text message, I don't get an email, I don't get anything from this particular tenant except for the rent. So again, some people put down being a landlord. It's not that bad, depending on who you have living in the property, and how much work may need to be done. The longer you're there, you develop systems in order to get things done and process quickly, right? Now, do landlords have expenses? Yes, they do have expenses. But trust and believe, when you deduct all of the expenses, of course, differ, just like rents differ. They differ based on location, they differ based on the property itself, and expenses also, expenses, the price, etc. All of that differs. However, I would say that many, not all, but many are definitely making more than $67 a month. Now, let's add and look and compare something else, and that's personality. You see, I have a friend actually who also is involved in a crowd fund. She is also in a partnership. It's sort of like a crowd fund, this other partnership that she's in, but she's not one of the general partners, meaning she's not one of the main partners that is making the decisions. She's just one of the money partners. Watch this. She is making a return, but the return is not that high. That's number one. It's a little over 125. I believe she's making maybe like $300 a month. And it's also a private REIT, if you will. It's not public. That's what she's involved in. Anyway, she said to me that she does not like it because she has no control over what's happening, and she doesn't really know what's happening. They issue out you know, information about what they're doing. But she says that she would really prefer to get her hands dirty and be the one that's managing the property. I have another friend that told me that she is the same way as well. She basically flips houses. So she would really like to be more involved with the construction, more involved with picking the flooring, the tiles, the woodwork, etc. So crowdfunding is not for her. She wants to be hands-on. So again, I'd like to know where I'm wrong when you have certain people who don't want to have anything to do with the property, and then you have other people who want to have something to do with the property. It's money, it's time, and it's personality that we really have to weigh. But being that this was a crunch, and being that this man just said just pick any strategy, he didn't say pick the best one, he said just pick any one, and I picked Nurse B&B. I'm still trying to figure out to a certain extent why I would be wrong, but I know that I'm not wrong. I know that I'm right. As a matter of fact, to a certain extent, Nurse B&B is the best one. And the reason why it's the best one is because it's both active and passive at the same time. So it can be, it's a good strategy for people who would be in that lane. It makes the most money, number one, out of all of the strategies that I listed. I'm not going to talk about wholesaling, because to be honest, with wholesaling, you might even be able to make more. But wholesaling does take a lot more time. Nurse B&B does not take as much time as wholesaling. And then when it comes to personality, it's kind of a little bit of both. It really depends on who it is that you're going to get to stay on the property. And if you aim for nurses, the other group that I heard is that doesn't stay in the apartment long would be air pilots and stewardesses. The only thing with them is that for New York, they're not really the best people to choose, because New York City wants 30 days. But anyway, I just want to put you guys up on game to let you know what's going on out here. It's not a scam per se, because they're not conning you out of your money. However, it is a bit unethical, because they are lying by saying that their way is the better way, when in fact, if you look at the numbers, it's not. When you look at the time spent, it's not. And when you look at personality, it's neither here nor there. So guys, that's all I have for you tonight. Hopefully the information that I shared with you will help you make wiser decisions. Feel free to pass this amongst your friends. Remember, each one, reach one, teach one. Bye for now. Until next time, have a good night.